The warning lights painted Commander Zexhi's blue skin in shades of crimson as another system failed aboard the Kethmoran flagship. The massive vessel, once the pride of the Galactic Federation's fleet, now drifted helplessly through the void between star systems. Its quantum drives had failed 3 cycles ago, leaving them stranded in the empty darkness of space with no way to call for help. "Status report," Zexhi demanded, his 4 arms working frantically across the command console. The bridge crew of various alien species moved with barely controlled panic. Some had multiple eyes that darted between failing displays, while others used tentacles to manipulate controls with increasing desperation. "Life support is down to 30%, reported Subcommander Valera, her insectoid mandibles clicking nervously. "The quantum core is completely dead. We've lost all long-range communications. The backup fusion reactors are failing one by one." Zexhi's heart sank. The Kethmoran carried over 50,000 beings from a dozen different species. They were supposed to be the evacuation fleet for the outer colonies before the Exathek invasion reached them. Now they were all going to die in the cold emptiness between stars. "How long do we have?" he asked, though he feared the answer. "At current consumption rates, maybe 2 days before life support fails completely," Valera replied. "The temperature is already dropping. Some of the cold-blooded species are starting to go into hibernation mode." The bridge fell silent except for the constant beeping of alarms and the hum of failing systems. Zexhi had commanded ships for over 200 years. He had fought in 3 wars and survived countless dangers. But this was different. This was hopeless. "Sir," called out Navigator Threnoke from his station, "I'm detecting a small vessel approaching. It's not showing on our long-range sensors, but visual confirms a ship about 2 kilometers off our starboard side." "What kind of ship?" Zexhi asked, allowing himself a small spark of hope. "Unknown configuration. It's small, maybe 50 meters long. The design is strange. Angular, primitive-looking, but it's definitely powered and moving under its own control." Zexhi moved to the main viewer. The small ship was indeed odd-looking. Where most galactic vessels were smooth and curved, following aerodynamic principles even though they rarely entered atmospheres, the ship was all hard angles and flat surfaces. It looked like it had been built from metal scraps welded together. "Are they responding to our emergency beacon?" he asked. "No, sir. Our beacon failed when the quantum core went down. They're just approaching on their own." "Maybe they're scavengers," suggested Valera, "coming to pick through our remains." With a ship that small, they couldn't carry much. The strange vessel moved closer. Through the viewer, Zexhi could see what looked like crude exhaust flames pushing it forward. Not ion drives or quantum thrust, but actual chemical combustion. How is something so primitive operating in deep space? "They're signaling us," reported Communications Officer Draktha. "Audio only. The signal is weak, but clear. Put it through." A voice crackled over the bridge speakers. It spoke in rough, accented galactic standard. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth ship Determination. We see you're in distress. Do you require assistance?" The bridge crew exchanged glances. Earth? That was the human homeworld. Humans had only joined the Galactic Federation 50 years ago. They were considered one of the most primitive species in known space. Their technology was centuries behind everyone else's. What could they possibly do to help? But they were dying, and even primitive help was better than none. "This is Commander Zexhi of the Federation vessel Kethmoran. We have lost all primary systems. 50,000 beings aboard. Life support failing. Any assistance would be appreciated." There was a pause. Then the human voice came back. "Understood, Kethmoran. We're coming alongside. Stand by for docking procedures." "Captain Chun," Zexhi said carefully, "I should warn you, our ship is massive. Over 8 kilometers long. Your vessel appears to be quite small. I'm not sure what assistance you can provide." Another pause. "Commander, don't worry about our size. We humans have a saying, it's not the size of the ship, it's the size of the fight in the crew. We'll figure something out." "Chin out." Zexhi looked around the bridge. His officers seemed torn between hope and confusion. What could one small primitive ship do against the massive technological failure they faced? Sir, said Valera quietly, should we prepare a shuttle to evacuate essential personnel to their ship? Their ship can't possibly hold more than a dozen beings. Maybe 20 if we pack them in, Zexhai replied. That would mean abandoning 50,000 others to die. Then what do we do? Zexhai watched through the viewer as the human ship maneuvered closer. It moved with surprising grace despite its crude appearance. Whoever was piloting it knew what they were doing. We wait and see what they have in mind, he said. And we pray to whatever gods we believe in that humans are more resourceful than their technology suggests. The small Earth ship moved alongside the massive Kethmoran like a tiny fish swimming next to a whale. Through the bridge windows, Zexhai could see lights moving inside the human vessel. They were definitely up to something. Commander, came Captain Chen's voice again. We're going to need access to your ship. Do you have any airlocks that are still functioning? Airlock 7 Alpha is still operational, though barely. Deck 15, Section C. Perfect. We're extending our boarding tube now. Permission to come aboard? Granted. Zexhai turned to his security chief. Send a detail to meet them, and have someone from engineering standing by. Yes, sir. As they waited, more systems failed around them. The lights dimmed further, and Zexhai could feel the temperature dropping noticeably. Whatever the humans had in mind, they needed to act fast. 10 minutes later, Security Chief Grondar's voice came over the comm. Commander, the humans are aboard. You need to see this. What is it? They brought equipment. Lots of it. And, sir, they're already working on our systems. Working on them how? You wouldn't believe me if I told you. You need to come down here. Zexhai left Subcommander Valera in charge of the bridge and made his way to Deck 15. What he found there defied everything he thought he knew about human technology. There were 5 humans in the corridor outside Airlock 7 Alpha, and they had somehow brought through equipment that should have been impossible to fit through the narrow boarding tube. Massive pieces of machinery, power units, and what looked like portable manufacturing devices lined the hallway. One of the humans, a female with short dark hair, approached him. She was tall for her species, with calloused hands and clothes that looked like they had seen serious work. Commander Zexhai, I'm Captain Sarachan. We need to talk. How did you get all this equipment through the airlock? We didn't. We made it. She gestured to one of the machines. Portable Fabrication Unie. We fed your ship's waste products and some raw materials from our hold into it and built what we needed. Where's your engineering section? Captain Chun, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but our quantum core is completely dead. Our fusion reactors are failing. These are highly advanced systems that require... Commander, she interrupted gently. Trust me, we humans have been fixing broken things with whatever we had on hand for thousands of years. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones. Now, where's engineering? Something in her tone made Zexhai believe her. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was the calm confidence she displayed while standing in a ship full of dying aliens. Either way, he decided to trust her. Follow me, he said. As they walked through the corridors of the failing ship, Captain Chun asked questions. Not about the advanced technology, but about basic things. How many people were aboard? What was the atmosphere composition? How much power did they need to keep everyone alive? The thing is, she explained as they walked, your technology is amazing when it works. But when it breaks, it's really broken. Human technology is cruder, but it's robust. It's designed to be fixed with basic tools and common sense. They reached the main engineering deck. Chief Engineer Colvan, a 6-armed hexapod, looked up from where he was frantically trying to restart one of the backup fusion reactors. Captain Chun, this is Chief Engineer Colvan. Colvan, Captain Chun thinks she can help us. Colvan's eye stalks focused on the small human. With respect, Captain, this is a Federation-class vessel. The systems are beyond anything your species has encountered. Captain Chun walked over to the massive fusion reactor housing and placed her hand on it. Mind if I take a look? Captain, the containment field is unstable. If you open that housing, I'm not going to open it. Just want to listen. She pressed her ear against the metal housing and closed her eyes. For a long moment, she was silent. Then she nodded. Magnetic containment system, right? using superconducting coils for the field generation. Cool Vaness eye stalks widened. How did you? Because that's how we do it, just bigger and fancier. The humming is wrong. Sounds like 3 of your field coils are out of alignment. Probably because they lost power and reset to default positions instead of maintaining their operational configuration. That's exactly what happened. But to fix it requires a complete recalibration of the quantum field matrix. We don't have the equipment. Captain Shin smiled. Good thing we brought our own. My boys are setting up a field realignment unit right now. Should have you back online within the hour. That's impossible. Even if you had the equipment, which you can't, the power requirements alone. Chief, you're thinking too complicated. We're going to bypass the quantum matrix entirely and use a simple electromagnetic field to nudge your coils back into position. Then, we'll let your system take over from there. She keyed her radio. Chinta Rodriguez. How's that field generator coming? Almost ready, Captain. Give us 10 minutes to finish the connections. Zexhai found himself staring at the human captain. You're serious? You think you can fix our reactor? Commander, I've spent the last 20 years keeping old ships running with nothing but spare parts and determination. This is just a bigger version of the same problem. As they waited, more humans came through the airlock, somehow bringing even more equipment. They moved through the ship with purpose, splitting up to work on different systems. Zexhai watched in amazement as they began making modifications that seemed crude but effective. Captain, he had to ask, how did you know we were in trouble? Our distress beacon wasn't working. We didn't, she admitted. We're out here on a salvage run. Old habit from the early days of human space travel. We look for anything useful floating around. When we saw your ship, we figured someone might need help. You came to help strangers without being asked? Commander, that's what people do. When someone's in trouble, you help if you can. Doesn't matter if they're human or alien or whatever. Life is precious. A voice crackled over her radio. Captain, we've got the field generator online, ready to start the realignment. Do it, Rodriguez. Through the engineering deck, Zexhai could hear a new sound, a low humming that gradually grew stronger. Chief Engineer Cole Van's eye stalks swiveled between his instruments and the reactor housing. The magnetic field is stabilizing, he reported, his voice filled with wonder. The coils are moving back into position. How are they doing this? Brute force and human stubbornness, Captain Shun replied with a grin. Suddenly, the lights brightened. The constant beeping of alarms changed tone as systems began coming back online. Throughout the ship, Zexhai could hear the sound of machinery starting up. Reactor 1 is back online, Colvan announced. Power output at 60% and climbing. I'm reading full containment field integrity. That's just the beginning, Captain Shin said. My team is working on your life support, your communications array, and your navigation systems. We can't fix your quantum core, but we can get you basic propulsion using your backup ion drives. Captain, Zexhai said slowly, your species has been part of the Federation for 50 years. You're classified as a primitive civilization. How is this possible? Captain Shin looked at him seriously. Commander, humans have been surviving against impossible odds for our entire history. We've learned that when everything breaks down, you don't give up. You adapt. You improvise. You find a way. She gestured around the engineering deck, where human and alien engineers were now working side by side. Your technology is beautiful when it works perfectly, but perfection is fragile. Human technology is designed to work even when everything goes wrong. But your ship, Zexhai protested. It looks so primitive. The determination? She's ugly as sin and twice as mean. Built her myself from salvage parts. But she's reliable. She's brought us through 3 system failures, 2 pirate attacks, and a solar storm that would have fried most Federation ships. Another voice came over the radio. Captain, we've got main life support back online. Temperature rising, air recycling at full capacity. Good work, team. Zexhai felt something he hadn't experienced in days. Hope. Not just hope, but amazement. These humans, these supposedly primitive beings, were accomplishing what his advanced crew had thought impossible. Captain Shun, he said formally, On behalf of the 50,000 beings aboard this vessel, I thank you. But I have to ask why? Why risk your ship and your crew for strangers? Captain Chin looked around the engineering deck, watching humans and aliens working together to save the massive vessel. Her expression was thoughtful. Commander, when humans first joined the Federation, a lot of species looked down on us, called us primitive, violent, backwards. Maybe they were right. But there's one thing humans have always known that some advanced civilizations seem to forget. What's that? Nobody survives alone. We're all in this together, whether we're human or Kethmoran or whatever. When someone needs help, you help. Because someday, you might be the one who needs saving. As if to punctuate her words, the main engines rumbled to life for the first time in days. Through the deck plating, Zexhai could feel the ship beginning to move under its own power again. Besides, Captain Shun added with a smile, we humans love a good challenge. And this was one hell of a challenge. 3 hours after the humans had come aboard, the Kethmoran was not just functional. It was running better than it had in months. Zexhai stood on the bridge, watching his crew work alongside the human engineers. The contrast was striking. Whereas people used sophisticated diagnostic tools and complex procedures, the humans used simple instruments and what they called common sense. Commander, reported Subcommander Valera, all primary systems are now online. Life support is at full capacity. The backup fusion reactors are not just running. They're running more efficiently than before. How is that possible? The humans modified our fuel injection system. Instead of the complex quantum-regulated flow we were using, they installed something called a mechanical regulator. It's simpler, but it responds faster to load changes. Zexhai shook his head in amazement. He activated his communicator. Commander Zexhai to Captain Chun. Chun here, Commander. Could you join me on the bridge? I'd like to discuss our situation. On my way. When Captain Chun arrived on the bridge, she looked around with obvious appreciation. The Federation bridge design was impressive with its multiple levels and sophisticated displays. But Zexhai noticed she paid more attention to the crew than the technology. Impressive setup, she said. Very efficient layout. Your communication systems must be top-notch with a bridge this size. They were, until they failed. Your people restored them, but I understand the repairs are temporary. Some are, some aren't, Chen admitted. The mechanical fixes will last indefinitely. The electronic patches we've done will hold for a few months, maybe a year if you're careful. The real problem is that your quantum core is completely dead. Chief Engineer Colvan, who had been invited to the bridge meeting, spoke up. Captain Chun, I must say, your repairs are remarkable. But without quantum drive capability, we're limited to sublight speeds. At best, we can make it to the nearest Federation outpost in 8 months. That's a problem, Zexhai said. Our passengers include several species that can't survive that long in space without specialized medical treatment. The ethereals need quantum-charged atmosphere every 60 days or they begin to fade. The crystalline beings require specific mineral supplements we don't have enough of for an 8-month journey. Captain Chun frowned thoughtfully. How many ethereals and crystallines are we talking about? 300 ethereals, 50 crystalline beings. And these quantum-charged atmosphere and mineral supplements, are they naturally occurring anywhere? The minerals can be found on most rocky planets with volcanic activity. The quantum charging requires a functioning quantum reactor. Or, said Chun slowly, a really good understanding of particle physics and some creative engineering. She keyed her radio. Chinta Martinez, come up to the bridge, would you? Bring your particle physics textbooks. Aye, Captain. While they waited, Zexhai asked, Captain, may I ask about your crew? How many humans are aboard your ship? 15. Small crew for a long-range salvage vessel, but we've been together for years. We know how to work efficiently. 15 humans are doing the work that would normally require 50 Federation engineers. Different approaches, Chin shrugged. Federation engineering is very specialized. Each person knows their specific system inside and out. Human engineering is more generalist. We figure if it's broken, somebody on the crew can probably fix it, even if it's not their specialty. A young human arrived on the bridge, carrying what looked like an actual paper book. Zexai had heard that humans still used primitive written materials, but he'd never seen one up close. "Commander, this is Lieutenant Maria Martinez, our physicist. Maria, we need to create quantum-charged atmosphere for some ethereal passengers. Can we do that without a quantum reactor?" Martinez opened her book and flipped through several pages. "Theoretically, yes. We need to create a localized quantum field using electromagnetic manipulation, like a quantum reactor, but much smaller and simpler." "How much smaller?" asked Colvan. "About the size of a backpack. The tricky part is getting the field harmonics right for ethereal physiology." She looked at Colvan. "I need to study their biological requirements." "You want to build a portable quantum field generator," Valera said slowly. "That technology doesn't exist." "Sure it does," Martinez replied. "We just haven't built one yet. Give me a day to work out the math and gather some materials." Zexai found himself staring again. These humans talked about impossible technology like it was a simple repair job. "What about the mineral supplements for the crystalline beings?" he asked. "That's easier," Captain Chen said. "We passed an asteroid field about 6 hours back. Lots of rocky debris, probably with the minerals we need. We just need to go back and do some mining." "Captain, we can't risk taking the Kethmoran into an asteroid field. The ship is too large, and our maneuvering systems are still unreliable." "Who said anything about taking the Kethmoran? The determination is perfect for asteroid mining. We do it all the time. Your tiny ship can mine asteroids?" "Commander, humans have been miners for thousands of years. Just because we're in space doesn't change the basic principles. You find the rocks with the good stuff, you break them up, and you take what you need." Shin activated her communicator again. "Shin to all hands. Prep for asteroid mining operations. Standard loadout." "Aye, Captain. While my crew sets up the mining equipment, Lieutenant Martinez can work with your people on the quantum field generator. How long do we have before the ethereals start having problems?" "About 40 days, Zexai replied. "Plenty of time. Martinez, I can have a prototype ready in 2 days, tested and calibrated in 4. "Outstanding." Captain Shin looked around the bridge. "Any other critical problems we should know about?" Valera spoke up hesitantly. "There's one more issue. The passenger sections have been running on emergency power for days. Many of the families have children who are scared. The different species don't always get along well when they're stressed." Ashen nodded. "Morale problem. That's actually easier to fix than the technical stuff. Ow! Give people something to do. Nothing beats sitting around worrying like having a job to focus on. I bet you have plenty of people with useful skills among your passengers." "Well, yes, but they're refugees. They've lost everything." "Exactly. Which means they have nothing left to lose and everything to gain by helping." "Commander, what if we put some of your passengers to work helping with repairs and improvements? Give them a sense of purpose." Zexai considered this. It was highly irregular. Passengers weren't supposed to work on ship operations. But then everything about this situation was irregular. "What kind of work did you have in mind?" "Depends on what skills they have. But I guarantee you have people down there who know how to build things, fix things, organize things. We just need to figure out who they are and what they're good at." Chief Engineer Colvan spoke up. "Captain, some of our passengers were engineers and technicians before the evacuation. They might know systems we're not familiar with." "Perfect. Let's set up some mixed teams. Humans and Federation people working together. We can teach each other." Over the next several hours, Zexai watched something remarkable happen. The humans didn't just fix problems, they improved everything they touched. But more importantly, they involved his people in the process. Captain Chun organized volunteer teams among the passengers. A hexapod architect helped design better living spaces. A crystalline metallurgist provided expertise on mineral processing. Several ethereal artists created beautiful decorations to improve the ship's atmosphere. "Commander," reported Security Chief Grandar, "morale in the passenger sections has improved dramatically. People are no longer just sitting around worrying. They feel useful again." "What about tensions between species?" Actually better than before the crisis. Working together on shared problems seems to have brought everyone closer. Zexai wasn't surprised. He'd noticed the same thing on the bridge. Humans had a way of making everyone feel included in the solution. His contemplation was interrupted by Captain Chen's voice over the comm. Commander, we're heading back to those asteroids. Want to come along for the ride? On your ship? Sure. I think you'd find it educational. Besides, it's about time you saw how humans really work. An hour later, Zexai found himself aboard the Earth vessel Determination. If he thought it looked primitive from the outside, the interior was even more surprising. Everything was functional but crude. Pipes and conduits ran along the walls without any attempt to hide them. The bridge was cramped, with control panels that looked like they'd been hand-built from spare parts. But everything worked. More than worked, it worked well. Welcome aboard, Captain Chun said as she strapped herself into the pilot's chair. Hope you don't mind a little turbulence. The Determination isn't built for comfort. This ship is remarkable, Zexai said honestly. I've never seen anything like it. She's a mutt, Chin said fondly. Hull from a Federation cargo ship, engines from 3 different sources, life support system I built myself. But she's reliable. Lieutenant Martinez, who was serving as navigator, called out, Asteroid field coming up, Captain. Lots of good targets. Through the forward window, Zexai could see the asteroid field. Hundreds of rocky objects ranging in size from pebbles to small moons drifted in a loose cloud. How do you find the ones with the minerals you need? He asked. Spectral analysis, replied Martinez, running her hands over a control panel that looked like it belonged in a museum. We scanned them for the chemical signatures we're looking for. There, she pointed at a medium-sized asteroid. That one's got everything we need. Iron, nickel, rare earth elements, and traces of the exotic materials the crystalline beings require. Captain Chun maneuvered the ship toward the asteroid with skill that impressed Zexai. The Determination moved through the field like it belonged there, dodging debris with casual ease. How are you going to extract the minerals? Zexai asked. That asteroid is solid rock. Carefully, Chun replied with a grin. She brought the ship alongside the asteroid and activated the mining systems. Zexai watched in fascination as mechanical arms extended from the ship's hull. Instead of the sophisticated extractors he was familiar with, these were simple but effective tools, drills, saws, and what looked like small explosive charges. The key to good asteroid mining, Chen explained as the arms went to work, is knowing exactly where to hit and how hard. Too gentle, and you waste time. Too aggressive, and you shatter everything into useless debris. The mining arms worked with surprising precision, carving into the asteroid and extracting chunks of mineral-rich rock. A conveyor system brought the material into the ship's processing bay. How long will this take? Zexai asked. About 6 hours to get everything we need. Want help? I don't know anything about mining. Perfect time to learn. For the next 6 hours, Zexai worked alongside the human crew, learning the basics of asteroid mining. It was dirty, physical work, very different from the clean, automated processes he was used to, but it was also satisfying in a way he hadn't expected. The humans treated him as an equal member of the team, teaching him techniques and listening to his suggestions. When he pointed out a more efficient way to organize the mineral sorting process using Federation organizational methods, they immediately implemented his idea. You're a natural at this, said crewman Rodriguez, the ship's mechanical specialist. Ever think about changing careers? I've commanded starships for 2 centuries, Zexai replied. I never imagined I'd enjoy manual labor. There's something to be said for working with your hands, Rodriguez agreed. Feels more real than pushing buttons and watching screens. By the time they returned to the Keth Moran, the mining operation had been a complete success. They'd extracted enough minerals to supply the crystalline beings for over a year, plus extra materials that could be used for other repairs and improvements. Commander, Captain Chen said as they docked, your people are going to be impressed with what we've brought back. But I think you might be more impressed with what my crew accomplished while we were gone. What do you mean? Lieutenant Martinez finished her quantum field generator. It's not just working, it's working better than expected. They made their way to the engineering section, where a crowd had gathered around a device about the size of a backpack. It hummed quietly, and the air around it seemed to shimmer slightly. "Commander," Lieutenant Martinez called out excitedly. "The prototype is perfect. We're generating a stable quantum field with 97% efficiency. The ethereal representatives tested it and say it's actually better than their natural atmosphere." Chief Engineer Cole Van approached them, his eye stalks bright with excitement. "Commander, these humans have accomplished something remarkable. Not only have they solved our immediate problems, but they've shown us new ways to approach engineering challenges." "What do you mean?" "They think differently than we do. Where we see complex problems requiring complex solutions, they see simple problems requiring clever solutions. Their approach is refreshing." Zexai looked around the engineering bay, watching humans and aliens working together on various projects. The atmosphere was one of excitement and cooperation, very different from the despair that had filled the ship just days before. "Captain Shun," he said, "I need to ask you something. This is clearly not the first time humans have accomplished the impossible. Your crew works too well together, knows too much about fixing other species' technology. How long have you been doing this kind of work?" Captain Shin smiled. "Commander, humans have been the Federation's unofficial emergency repair service for about 20 years now. We just don't advertise it." "What do you mean? When Federation ships break down in remote areas, who do you think fixes them? When colonies lose vital equipment and can't wait months for proper replacement parts, who do you think helps them? Humans have been quietly keeping the Federation running with duct tape and determination for decades. But why isn't this common knowledge? Because most Federation species prefer to think their technology is perfect and doesn't need help from primitive humans," Chin replied. "It's easier for everyone if we just fix things quietly and let them take the credit." Zexai felt a mixture of shame and amazement. "We've underestimated humans completely." "Not just humans," Chin said. "Every species has something valuable to contribute. The trick is figuring out what that is and how to use it. Humans happen to be good at fixing things and solving problems. Other species are good at other things." She gestured around the engineering bay. "Look at what we've accomplished working together. Your people's knowledge of advanced systems combined with our practical experience. Ethereal artistry making everything more beautiful. Crystalline precision in manufacturing. Hexapod organizational skills. It's remarkable. It's what the Federation could be if everyone stopped worrying about who's primitive and who's advanced. We're all in this together, remember." As if to emphasize her point, an announcement came over the ship's communication system in multiple languages. "Attention all passengers and crew. Thanks to the combined efforts of human and Federation teams, all critical systems are now fully operational. We will reach our destination in 12 days instead of 8 months. All species' special requirements have been met or exceeded." Cheering could be heard throughout the ship as beings of all types celebrated their salvation. 12 days? Zexai asked in surprise. "We managed to get your ion drives running at much higher efficiency than normal," Chen explained. "Plus, we plotted a more direct course using some gravitational assist maneuvers your people hadn't considered." Wow! Human space navigation grew out of sailing traditions. We're used to working with natural forces instead of just overpowering them. Your original course was the safest and most direct route for a quantum drive. But for ion drives, a more complex path that takes advantage of stellar gravity wells is actually faster." Zexai shook his head in wonder. In just a few days, these humans had not only saved a ship and passengers, but had shown him an entirely new way of thinking about problems and solutions. "Captain Shun," he said formally, "I owe you an apology. On behalf of my crew and myself, I apologize for underestimating your species." "No apology needed, Commander. We've all got things to learn from each other. That's what makes this galaxy interesting." As night's cycle fell over the ship, Zexai stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. For the first time in days, The view was peaceful instead of terrifying. The ship hummed with healthy activity, its systems running better than ever. He thought about what he'd learned about humans, about problem solving, and about the value of different perspectives. Tomorrow, he would write a report to Federation Command about this incident. But it wouldn't be the standard disaster report he'd originally expected to write. It would be a recommendation that the Federation take a much closer look at what humans had to offer. Because if 15 humans on one small ship could accomplish this much, what could they do if given proper resources and recognition? The thought was both exciting and slightly terrifying. Because if humans could achieve the impossible when everything was failing, what would they be capable of when everything was working perfectly? 5 days into their journey to the nearest Federation outpost, HFY was beginning to understand that his rescue had been about much more than emergency repairs. The humans hadn't just fixed the Kethmoran, they had transformed it into something entirely different. Commander, reported Subcommander Valera during the morning briefing. The efficiency reports are incredible. Our power consumption is down 30%, but our output is up 20% across all systems. How is that possible? The humans keep optimizing everything. Yesterday, they modified our air recycling system to recover waste heat and use it to warm the passenger quarters. Today, they're working on something they call predictive maintenance, fixing problems before they happen. HFY nodded, though he was still trying to process the changes. What about passenger morale? Better than I've seen on any ship, ever. The mixed work teams have created a sense of community. Different species are sharing knowledge, skills, even cultural traditions. The ethereal artists are teaching hexapod children how to paint with light. The crystal engineers are showing human mechanics how to grow metal instead of forging it. Growing metal? Apparently, if you understand crystal formation at the molecular level, you can guide metal into exactly the shape you need without cutting or welding. The humans are fascinated by it. HFY made his way to the main workshop, which had been set up in one of the larger cargo bays. What he found there defied easy description. It was part laboratory, part art studio, part classroom, and part industrial facility. Human crewman Rodriguez was working with a young crystalline being named Chartel to create what looked like a perfect sphere of metal that grew like a living thing. Nearby, Lieutenant Martinez was teaching a group of hexapod engineers how to use human-style diagnostic equipment. In another corner, an ethereal artist was showing Captain Chun how to bend light into complex patterns. "Commander," Captain Chun called out when she spotted him. "Perfect timing. Come see what Chartel has created." The metal sphere was now complete, floating in a containment field. But it wasn't solid. Streams of energy flowed through it in beautiful, complex patterns. "It's a power regulator," explained Chartel, their crystalline body chiming with excitement. "But it's also art. The energy patterns create music in the electromagnetic spectrum. It's functional and beautiful at the same time," Chen added. "This could revolutionize how we think about ship systems. Why shouldn't essential equipment also be aesthetically pleasing?" "Captain Chun," HFY said, "may I speak with you privately?" They moved to a quieter section of the workshop. "What's on your mind, Commander?" "This," HFY gestured around the bustling workshop. "All of this. You've created something I've never seen before. Different species working together, sharing knowledge, creating new technologies. How?" Chun considered the question carefully. "Commander, humans learned something important during our early space exploration. When you're far from home, dealing with unknown dangers, everyone on your crew becomes family. It doesn't matter where they came from or what they look like. What matters is that you take care of each other. But the Federation has been trying to achieve this kind of cooperation for centuries. We have cultural exchange programs, joint research projects, diplomatic initiatives. None of them work this well. That's because they're formal programs," Chen replied. "What you have here is people working together to solve immediate problems. They're not thinking about political differences or cultural barriers. They're thinking about how to make life better for everyone on the ship. It seems so simple when you explain it. The best solutions usually are simple. But simple doesn't mean easy." Their conversation was interrupted by commotion near the main entrance to the workshop. Security Chief Grondar was escorting a group of passengers, all from the same species, the Veltar. They looked agitated, their blue-green skin flushed with anger. "Commander," Grondar announced, "these passengers are demanding to speak with you. They have complaints about the current arrangements." The lead Veltar, a tall being with elaborate ceremonial markings, stepped forward. "I'm High Counselor Nexus Tar. I speak for all Veltar passengers aboard this vessel. We demand that you stop this mixing of species. It is inappropriate and dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Zexai asked. "Our young ones are being exposed to alien ideas and technologies. They are forgetting their own culture, their own superiority. This must stop immediately." Captain Chin stepped forward. "Counselor, with respect, your young ones seem pretty happy learning new things. You have no right to speak, human. Your species is barely civilized. We were building starships when your people were still living in caves." Zexai felt his temper rise, but Captain Chun just smiled calmly. "You're absolutely right, Counselor. Humans are newcomers to galactic civilization. That's why we have so much to learn from species like yours." The counselor seemed taken aback by Chen's agreement. "Well, yes, that's correct. I'm curious," Chen continued. "What can you teach us? What knowledge do the Veltar possess that could help everyone on this ship? We are master architects. Our cities are considered the most beautiful in the galaxy. We understand harmony, proportion, the proper arrangement of space, and function. That's incredible. We could really use that expertise. The passenger quarters on this ship are functional, but not very comfortable. Would you be willing to help us redesign them?" Counselor Nexus Tar blinked in confusion. You want our help?" "Of course. Why wouldn't we?" One of the younger Veltar spoke up. "Father, we could show them the principles of flow architecture, how to make spaces that feel larger and more peaceful." "Silence, child. This is not appropriate." "Actually," Zexai interjected, "it sounds very appropriate. Counselor, we have 50,000 beings on this ship from a dozen different species. Everyone deserves comfortable, beautiful living spaces. If your people can help achieve that, I would consider it a valuable contribution." The counselor looked around the workshop, taking in the sight of different species working together. His expression was conflicted. "This is irregular," he said finally. "Yes, it is," Chun agreed. "Most of the best things are." A small Veltar child tugged on the counselor's robes. "Please, Uncle Nexus. The humans showed us how to make lights that change colors with music. We could make the walls sing with our traditional melodies." The counselor looked down at the child, then back at the diverse groups working throughout the workshop. Slowly, his rigid posture began to relax. "You would listen to our cultural traditions, not dismiss them as primitive." "Counselor," Captain Chun said seriously, "every culture that has survived long enough to reach the stars has figured out something important about life. Humans would be honored to learn from Veltar architectural wisdom." And, added Zexai, "the passenger quarters really could use improvement. If you're willing to help, we're willing to listen." Over the next few hours, Zexai watched the counselor gradually transform from a rigid traditionalist into an enthusiastic collaborator. When shown the passenger quarters, he immediately began sketching improvements that would make the spaces more livable for everyone, not just Veltar. The key is understanding the psychological impact of spatial relationships, he explained to a mixed group of engineers and artists. Certain proportions create feelings of calm and security. Others create energy and excitement. By varying these proportions throughout the ship, we can create spaces that support different activities and moods. Captain Chin nodded approvingly. That makes perfect sense. On Earth, we call it feng shui or architectural psychology. Same principles, different names. You have similar concepts? Most cultures do, eventually. Humans figure out long ago that the places we live shape how we feel and behave. By evening, the counselor was fully integrated into the workshop community. His architectural knowledge, combined with crystalline manufacturing techniques and human practical engineering, was producing designs for passenger quarters that were both beautiful and highly functional. "Commander," the counselor approached Zexai as the day's shift was ending. "I owe you and Captain Chin an apology. I was closed-minded about this mixing of species. What changed your mind? I realized that my fear was not about losing our culture. It was about my culture not being valued. When you asked for our knowledge, when you treated our traditions as important, it changed everything. Your knowledge is important, counselor. All knowledge is important. Yes, I see that now. The young ethereal who taught my nephew to paint with light. She learned about Veltar color theory and used it to create something neither of our species had imagined before. That evening, Zexhai joined Captain Shin for dinner in the ship's main dining area. Another change the humans had implemented was communal dining spaces where different species could eat together. The sight was remarkable. Beings who would normally never interact were sharing meals and conversations. Captain, Zexhai said as they sat down with their food, I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about formal programs versus natural cooperation. Oh, the Federation has always approached interspecies relations as a diplomatic problem. Treaties, protocols, official exchanges. We never considered that the best way for species to understand each other might be simply working together on shared challenges. It's not the only way, Chen replied, but it's a good way. When you're focused on solving a problem together, you stop seeing differences as threats and start seeing them as resources. Is that how humans approach everything? As a problem to be solved through cooperation? Chen smiled. Not everything. Humans can be just as territorial and stubborn as any other species. But we learned early in our space age that survival depends on working together. When you're on a ship in the middle of nowhere and something breaks, it doesn't matter what planet your crewmate came from. What matters is whether they can help fix it. And now you apply that philosophy to everything. It works pretty well. Though I'll admit, some problems are harder than others. Their conversation was interrupted by an excited announcement over the ship's communication system. Attention all passengers and crew. The combined architectural and engineering teams have completed the first prototype of the new passenger quarter design. Tours will be available starting tomorrow morning. That was fast, Zexhai observed. When people are motivated and working together efficiently, amazing things happen quickly, Chen replied. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. She was right. The next morning, Zexhai joined the first tour group to see the prototype quarters. What he found exceeded all expectations. The space was larger than the original quarters, despite using the same amount of ship area. Curved walls and clever lighting created an illusion of even more space. The color scheme shifted subtly throughout the day, following patterns inspired by ethereal light art and Veltar psychological principles. Furniture grew from the walls using crystalline techniques, shaped by human ergonomic knowledge. But the most impressive feature was the integration of technology and art. Control surfaces were beautiful to look at, as well as functional. The air recycling vents were shaped to create pleasant sounds as air moved through them. Even the lighting served multiple purposes: illumination, decoration, and mood enhancement. This is extraordinary, said Passenger Representative Thalvar, a hexapod diplomat. It feels like a home, not a temporary shelter. How quickly can you retrofit the rest of the ship? Zexhai asked the design team. With the current workforce, about 6 days, replied Chief Engineer Colvan. But, Commander, there's something else you should see. They made their way to another section of the ship, where a second prototype had been built. This one was designed for families with children. The children had their own ideas, explained Martinez. They wanted spaces where different species could play together safely. The family quarters included areas designed for the different types of play preferred by various species children. Safe climbing structures for young hexapods, light play areas for ethereal children, puzzle alcoves for developing crystalline minds, and open spaces for human-style running games. The remarkable thing, noted Counselor Nexus Tar, is that the children designed most of this themselves. They understand intuitively how different species can share spaces successfully. Children usually do, Chen observed. They haven't learned to see differences as barriers yet. As they continued the tour, Zexhai realized that something fundamental had changed aboard the Keth Moran. It was no longer a ship carrying refugees from one place to another. It had become a community, a functioning, thriving community of different species working together. Captain Chun, he said as they returned to the main workshop area, I need to ask you something important. What's that? When we reach the Federation outpost, what happens to all this? He gestured around the bustling workshop. Do we go back to the old ways of doing things? Separate species, separate technologies, separate lives? Chun looked thoughtful. That depends, Commander. What do you want to happen? I want this to continue. I want the Federation to learn from what we've accomplished here. But I don't know how to make that happen. Then, maybe, Chun said with a smile, we need to solve that problem the same way we solved all the others. Ow! By working together to find solution. Over the next 2 days, an unlikely group came together to address the question of how to preserve and expand what they had created. The group included Zexhai and his senior officers Captain Chun and her crew, Councilor Nexustar, and other passenger representatives, and, most importantly, some of the children who had been instrumental in designing the new living spaces. The challenge, explained Lieutenant Martinez, is that what we've created here is organic. It grew out of necessity and cooperation. You can't just order other ships to replicate it. But we can document it, suggested Chief Engineer Colvan. Create a record of what we've learned and how we learned it. More than that, added Councilor Nexustar, we can create a training program, a way for crews from different ships to experience this kind of cooperation. What do you mean? Asked Zexhai. One of the human children, a boy named Tommy, spoke up. Like summer camp, but for grown-ups, where people from different species come to learn how to work together. The adults looked at each other in surprise. Out of the mouths of children. That's actually brilliant, Chin said. A training facility where mixed crews can work on real problems together. Learn each other's strengths and weaknesses in a controlled environment. It could work, Zexhai mused, but it would need official Federation support. Then, we'll have to convince them, Chin replied simply. Show them the results we've achieved, and let them draw their own conclusions. And if they're not convinced, Captain Chin grinned. Then, we'll have to achieve the impossible again. 3 days before they reached the Federation outpost, Zexhai received a priority communication from Admiral Kethros, the sector commander. The Admiral's holographic image appeared on the bridge's main screen, her scaled features showing the stern expression that had made her legendary throughout the fleet. Commander Zexhai, she began without preamble. Your situation report makes for interesting reading. Are you seriously claiming that a single human salvage vessel restored full operational capability to your ship? That's correct, Admiral. The humans not only repaired our critical systems, but improved them significantly. Our operational efficiency is now higher than it was before the failures began. And you trust these humans? Commander, I'm looking at intelligence reports that suggest human vessels have been operating in this sector for months, far from any authorized patrol routes. How do you know this wasn't some elaborate pirate operation? Zexhai felt his anger rise. Admiral, these humans saved 50,000 lives. They've asked for nothing in return. They've shared their technology and knowledge freely. That's what concerns me, Commander. No one provides assistance on this scale without expecting something in return. I want full security scans of all human personnel and their vessel before you dock. Admiral, with respect, that's an order, Commander. We'll conduct our own evaluation of these humans and their motives when you arrive. The transmission ended, leaving Zexhai staring at the blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Sir, Subcommander Valera said quietly, should we inform Captain Chun about the Admiral's concerns? Before Zexhai could answer, Captain Chin's voice came over the comm. Commander, could you and your senior staff meet me in the main workshop? We have something to show you. 20 minutes later, Zexhai and his officers stood in the workshop watching what could only be described as organized chaos. The mixed teams of humans, Federation crew, and passengers were working on dozens of different projects simultaneously. But this wasn't the relaxed atmosphere he'd grown accustomed to. There was urgency in the air. Captain Chun, Zexhai said, my officers and I just received some concerning news from Federation Command about security protocols when we reach the outpost. Chen asked calmly. How did you know? Commander, we've been monitoring Federation communications for the past few days. Not to spy, but to understand what we're walking into. She gestured around the workshop. We've been preparing. Preparing for what? Lieutenant Martinez stepped forward, carrying what looked like a formal report. Commander, we've documented everything. Every repair we made, every improvement, every new technology developed through cross-species cooperation. Complete technical specifications, manufacturing procedures, performance data. We've also prepared demonstration units, added Chief Engineer Colvan. Portable examples of the key innovations that can be tested independently. Captain Chun nodded toward a group working in the far corner of the workshop. And we've been training your people to maintain and improve everything we've done. Not just the technical aspects, but the cooperation methods that made it all possible. You're preparing to leave, Zexhai realized. We're preparing for the possibility that Federation Command might not appreciate what we've accomplished here, Chen replied diplomatically. Captain, I won't let them treat you as criminals. You're heroes. Commander, we're not worried about being treated as criminals. We're worried about being treated as threats. Before Zexhai could ask what she meant, Counselor Nexustar approached them with a concerned expression. Commander, Captain Chun, we have a problem. Some of the passengers are becoming worried about what happens when we reach the outpost. What kind of problem? Zexhai asked. They don't want to be separated. The mixed families that have formed, the work groups, the friendships between species. They're afraid Federation authorities will break up everything we've built here. A young ethereal named Lysandra joined them. Commander, my family has been working with a crystalline family and 2 human families. Our children have become friends. We've shared knowledge that has helped all of us. We don't want to go back to the old ways of living separately. The thing is, Captain Chun said carefully, we've accidentally created something that challenges how the Federation typically handles interspecies relations. What do you mean? Commander, look around this workshop. Different species working together as equals, sharing technology freely, creating new solutions by combining different approaches. This is the kind of cooperation the Federation has been trying to achieve for centuries through treaties and protocols. And we did it in a few weeks just by working together on shared problems, added Martinez. Which makes certain people in Federation Command very nervous, Chun continued. Because if this kind of cooperation is possible, it raises questions about why it hasn't been happening already. Zexhai began to understand. Political questions. Exactly. There are a lot of species in the Federation who prefer to maintain their separate identities and advantages. The idea that everyone working together might be better than everyone competing separately is threatening to some interests. So what do? We demonstrate that what we've accomplished is real, beneficial, and replicable, Chun said. And we hope that the evidence speaks for itself. And if it doesn't? Captain Chen smiled, but Zexhai noticed it didn't reach her eyes. Then, we'll deal with that when it happens. The next 2 days passed quickly as everyone worked to finalize their preparations. The atmosphere aboard the ship grew more tense as they approached the Federation outpost, but also more determined. On the final day, Zexhai received another communication from Admiral Kethros. This time, the Admiral was not alone. Several other high-ranking officers were visible in the background, including some Zexhai recognized as being from the Federation's Internal Security Division. Commander Zexhai, the Admiral began, we've been analyzing the technical data you transmitted. Some of our experts are skeptical about the claims you've made regarding human technological capabilities. Admiral, I've seen their work firsthand. It's remarkable. Perhaps we'll make our own determination when you dock. I'm also concerned about the reports of unauthorized mixing of passengers from different species. That kind of uncontrolled cultural exchange can be problematic. Problematic how, Admiral? Commander, different species have different needs, different social structures, different ways of doing things. Mixing them together without proper protocols can lead to conflicts and misunderstandings. Admiral, with respect, I've seen the opposite. Working together has reduced conflicts and increased understanding. We'll see, Commander. Dock at Base 7 in 6 hours. Security teams will be waiting to conduct interviews with all personnel involved in these innovations. When the transmission ended, Zexhai found himself more worried than he'd been when the ship was failing. At least then, the problem had been simple. Fix the ship or die. Now, the problems were political, and political problems were always more complicated. He made his way to the main workshop one last time as the ship prepared for docking. The scene there was bittersweet. Mixed teams were putting finishing touches on their projects, knowing that this might be the last time they worked together. Captain Shun, Zexhai, said, I want you to know that regardless of what happens at the outpost, this experience has changed me. Changed all of us. We've seen what's possible when people work together without barriers. Commander, it's been an honor working with you and your crew. Whatever happens next, remember that what we've accomplished here is real. It's not going away just because some people don't understand it. What will you do if Federation Command decides you're too much of a threat? Chun smiled, and this time it was genuine. Commander, humans have been dealing with authorities who don't understand us for thousands of years. We adapt. We find ways to keep doing what needs to be done, even when people try to stop us. That sounds ominous. Not ominous. Hopeful. Because no matter what anyone decides in official meetings, the people who work together on this ship know what's possible. They'll remember. And someday, when the time is right, they'll find ways to make it happen again. As the Kethmaran approached the Federation outpost, Zexhai stood on the bridge watching the massive station grow larger on the main screen. The outpost was impressive, a gleaming example of Federation engineering, with separate docking areas for different species and careful protocols to prevent unauthorized mixing of populations. It looked sterile and lifeless compared to the vibrant community that had developed aboard his ship. Commander, reported Navigator Threnica, the outpost is directing us to docking Bay 7. They're also requesting that all non-Federation personnel remain aboard until security clearance is completed. All non-Federation personnel? Zexhai asked. The humans, sir. They're to remain confined to their ship until further notice. Captain Chin's voice came over the comm. Commander, we're receiving the same instructions. Looks like we're not welcome at the welcoming party. Captain, I'll speak with Admiral Kethros. This is unacceptable. Don't worry about it, Commander. We're used to being the outsiders. Just remember what we talked about. As the ship docked, Zexhai watched through the port windows as Federation security teams took positions around the human vessel Determination. The small ship looked even more crude and primitive next to the sleek Federation designs, but Zexhai now knew that appearances could be very deceiving. Commander, Subcommander Valera said quietly, the passengers are asking what they should tell the security teams about their experiences aboard the ship. Tell them the truth, Zexhai replied. All of it. Let Admiral Kethros and her people hear directly from the people who lived through this experience. Some of the passengers are worried about getting the humans in trouble. Then, tell them that the best way to help the humans is to make sure everyone understands what really happened here. An hour later, Zexhai found himself in the outpost's main briefing room, facing Admiral Kethros and a panel of Federation officials. The room was designed in the traditional Federation style, formal, imposing, with clear hierarchical arrangements. Commander Zexhai, the Admiral began, your report raises serious questions about protocol violations and security breaches. I want to understand exactly what happened aboard your vessel. Admiral, what happened was remarkable. 50,000 beings were saved through the cooperative efforts of multiple species working together. What I'm concerned about, Commander, is the precedent this sets. If we allow unauthorized vessels to conduct major modifications to Federation ships, where does it end? What's to stop every pirate or terrorist group from claiming they're just providing assistance? Admiral, these people saved lives. Perhaps. But at what cost to Federation security and sovereignty? The briefing continued for hours, with Zexhai trying to explain the technical and social innovations that had been achieved while the panel focused on protocol violations and security concerns. It became clear that they weren't really interested in understanding what had happened. They were building a case for why it should never happen again. Finally, Admiral Kethros called a recess. "Commander, we'll continue this tomorrow. In the meantime, you and your crew will be debriefed separately. The passengers will be processed through normal refugee procedures. What about the humans? The humans will remain confined pending a full investigation of their vessel and their activities in this sector." "Admiral, that's unjust. They're heroes, not criminals." "That remains to be determined, Commander." As Zexai left the briefing room, he felt a deep sense of frustration. Everything that had been accomplished aboard the Kethmoran, the innovations, the cooperation, the proof that different species could work together as equals, was being reduced to a bureaucratic problem to be managed. But as he walked through the corridors of the outpost, he began to notice something interesting. Despite the official attempts to separate and process the Kethmoran's passengers according to standard procedures, they were finding ways to stay connected. Ethereal and Veltar families were sitting together in waiting areas. Crystalline engineers were sharing technical drawings with hexapod mechanics. Human children, the few who had been aboard as passengers rather than crew, were teaching alien children the games they'd learned during the voyage. The bonds that had been formed aboard the ship weren't breaking just because they'd reached an official Federation facility. If anything, the attempt to separate everyone was making those bonds stronger. "Commander," a voice called behind him. He turned to see Counselor Nexustar approaching with a group of passenger representatives from various species. "Counselor, how are the processing procedures going?" "Slowly," the Veltar replied. "But that's not why we wanted to speak with you. We've been talking, all of us, about what happens next." "Oh, we don't want to lose what we found aboard your ship," said Lysandra, the young ethereal. "The cooperation, the shared learning, the sense of community. We want to find ways to continue it, even if Federation Command doesn't approve." "Especially if Federation Command doesn't approve," said Chartel, the crystalline engineer. "What we experienced was real. It worked. It made all of our lives better." And added Chief Engineer Colvan, who had joined the group, "Some of us have been thinking about Captain Chen's suggestion." "What suggestion?" "About creating a training facility. A place where crews from different ships could learn to work together the way we did." Counselor Nexistar nodded enthusiastically. "Not an official Federation program, at least not at first. Something independent. Something that exists because people want it to exist. Like the humans do," Lysandra added. "They don't wait for permission to help people. They just do what needs to be done." Zexai looked around the group of beings from different species, all united by their shared experience aboard the Kethmoran. Despite the official attempts to process and separate them, they had found each other and were already planning their next steps together. Maybe Captain Chen had been right. Maybe the most important changes happened not because of official decisions, but because people who had experienced something better refused to go back to something worse. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "Your support," Counselor Nexustar replied. "Your voice, and eventually your expertise. You want me to leave Federation service?" "We want you to expand it," Colvan said. "Show the Federation what's possible when we stop limiting ourselves to old ways of thinking." As Zexai considered this proposition, he realized that his choice was simple. He could continue serving a Federation that saw diversity as a problem to be managed, or he could help build something new, something that saw diversity as strength to be celebrated. The decision, when it came, felt inevitable. "Count me in," he said. 6 months after the Kethmoran incident, Admiral Kethros stood in her office aboard the Federation command station, staring at reports that defied everything she thought she understood about galactic politics. "Explain this to me again," she said to her intelligence chief, Commander Dralvex. "Admiral, it started small. A few mixed crews working on independent cargo runs. Some joint research projects between species that had never collaborated before. Cultural exchange programs that weren't officially sanctioned but weren't technically illegal. And now? Now we have 17 independently operated stations scattered across 3 sectors, all following what they call the Kethmoran model. Ships from across the galaxy are requesting permission to dock and participate in their programs." Admiral Kethros studied the data on her screen. Ship efficiency reports, crew satisfaction ratings, technological innovation metrics all showed dramatic improvements on vessels that had participated in these unofficial programs. What about the humans? Are they behind this? That's the interesting part, Admiral. The humans aren't leading these initiatives. They're participating in them, but each station seems to be organized and run by the species that established it. But they're teaching human methods. Among other things, yes. But they're also teaching crystalline manufacturing, ethereal art science, Veltar architectural psychology, hexapod organizational theory. It's become a genuine exchange of knowledge. And our response has been what, exactly? Commander Dralvex looked uncomfortable. Officially, we've been monitoring the situation and preparing recommendations for formal regulation of these activities. Unofficially, Admiral, 12 of our own captains have quietly sent crew members to participate in these programs. The results are impressive. Admiral Kethros sat down heavily in her chair. Show me the determination incident file again. The holographic display showed a timeline of events, starting with the Kethmoran system failures and ending with the ship's arrival at the outpost. But now there were additional notations, follow-up reports on the passengers, and crew members who had experienced the human-led repairs. Admiral, Commander Dralvex said carefully, perhaps it's time to consider that we may have misunderstood the situation. How so? The humans weren't trying to undermine Federation authority or create some kind of competing organization. They were just doing what they always do, fixing problems and helping people. It's we who turned it into a political issue. Admiral Kethros studied the timeline more carefully. What happened to Captain Chun and her crew? That's complicated. Explain. Officially, they were released after our investigation found no evidence of criminal activity. Their ship was confiscated for detailed technical analysis that has been ongoing for 6 months. And unofficially, Captain Chun and her crew have been working as civilian contractors for various independent shipping companies. Their reputation has spread rapidly. Some of the most difficult rescue and repair jobs in the galaxy are being handled by human teams. Without their ship, Admiral, it appears the humans are remarkably adaptable. They've been building new ships, modifying existing vessels, and training other species in their methods. The technology they use isn't particularly advanced, but their approach to problem-solving is spreading. Admiral Kethros called up another file. Personnel reports from Federation vessels that had encountered human-trained crews. Listen to this, she said, reading from one report. The mixed crew demonstrated remarkable efficiency and innovation. Problems that would normally require weeks of analysis and specialized equipment were solved in hours using improvised solutions and collaborative approaches. She scrolled to another report. Recommend immediate adoption of human-style cross-training protocols. Our engine room efficiency has increased by 40% since implementing their maintenance procedures. Admiral, Commander Dralvex said, there's something else you should know. We've been receiving formal requests from several member species for Federation support of these cooperative training programs. Requests from governments? Requests from crews, passengers, civilian organizations, and, yes, some government agencies. The Veltar Cultural Council has officially endorsed what they call multi-species architectural cooperation. The Crystalline Engineers Guild has established formal knowledge-sharing agreements with human technical groups. And our member government's official responses? Mixed. Some are concerned about maintaining species independence and traditional hierarchies. Others are interested in the economic and technological benefits they've observed. Admiral Kethros stood up and walked to the large window that looked out over the Federation fleet docked at the station. Beautiful ships, all different but conforming to established design principles and operational protocols. Commander, she said slowly, I want you to arrange a meeting. With whom, Admiral? With Captain Chun and Commander HFY, and representative from each of these independent stations.